Hi everybody and welcome to our Wednesday program. Now I'm out in the open today. I'm in front of my new residence that is being currently built. We just painted it the other day. Hope you like the colour. And a bit of a nautical feel with the round window. This is actually the setup I've got with a little movable table and just thrown everything on top of that. Because the cafe I usually shoot the program is closed today, that's fine. So I was thrown into this dilemma of what I could do quickly. Here we are. So let's get started with this one. And it's reported in the Bangkok Post. New cannabis bill ready for cabinet. Health Minister says revisions will clearly spell out prohibitions on recreational use. And as you sort of go through the details, except for the fact that it's going to be legal for medicinal use, in other areas they're sort of winding the clock back even further than it was back 18 months ago when it was decriminalised. And a new version of the Cannabis and Hemp Control Bill will be proposed at the Cabinet meeting next week. The revised bill preserves the key point that cannabis is to be used for medical treatment only, but it will also state clearly that any use for recreational purposes will not be allowed. And the government's yet to clarify what will happen to the thousands of businesses that have sprung up in the legal vacuum that's existed since cannabis was removed from the list of controlled narcotics in 2022. It was in June 2022. And Dr. Cholnan, the Public Health Minister, said the revised bill would regulate which parts of the cannabis plant can be used, the manner in which they can be consumed, as well as acceptable quantities for possession. And under the new bill, the stem, roots, leaves and buds of the cannabis plant would be recategorised as a narcotic because of their THC content. And the minister said that smoking cannabis was likely to require a permit from a doctor. And Dr. Cholnan's comments came after numerous complaints about cannabis use among concert goers at the Coldplay concert at the Rajamangala National Stadium over the weekend. Many patrons said the pervasive smell of marijuana smoke affected their experience. Well, I wouldn't have been very happy either if I had gone to a concert and paid good money to have marijuana smoke wafting through my nostrils. As I've said before, I really don't care if people want to smoke marijuana or not. It's entirely up to them if they're adults. At the end of the day, though, I really don't want that stench wafting around me, particularly if I'm sitting down trying to enjoy some peace and quiet or eating. Dr. Cholnan said the use of cannabis at concerts is prohibited in the same way that smoking cigarettes is prohibited at public venues. Yeah, ditto if people want to be smoking cigarettes around me. The problem, he said, was that there were currently no legally enforceable rules that could be applied to punish concert goers who smoke pot. What's been the problem over the past 18 months? There's been this decriminalisation of cannabis. Okay, but there's been no constraints put in place so that people knew what exactly they could and couldn't do. So people just started opening up shops. And we'll talk about that now. It's believed that under the new bill, all cannabis plantations will be required a permit from authorities and must adopt advanced agricultural practices to ensure the plants will be medical grade. Plantations at home, as championed by Pumjai Thai, are not likely to continue. Meanwhile, here we go, many dispensaries that sell cannabis products for medicinal as well as recreational use are anxiously waiting clarity about their futures. And the number of cannabis shops nationwide is estimated to total more than 7,000. So 7,000 people who have gone and spent good money setting up retail. Now, you would have thought they might be eligible for some sort of compensation. But the government will be well entitled to say, well, we didn't actually say that you can set up these retail shops. We didn't say that you can't. So I think anybody trying to get money out of the government for some compensation will be a bit of a hard bargain. But that story, reported by Bangkok Post, going through a few more of the details of what we can expect in what's going to be called the Cannabis and Hemp Control Bill, which looks like it's going to be going to the Cabinet next week. So coming to you today from my front yard. This is my new house being built behind me, And should be in there in about 10 days. Blue skies, it's going to be about 32 today. No wind out on the Andaman Sea, which is only 50 metres away from me. Let's get into a bit of a follow-up on a story yesterday. We were reporting that Maya Bay, part of the Kopipi Islands, was one of the top 3 beaches in the world. Well done. This story from cowsodenglish.com, Krabi rushes to handle 120 of tourist boats a day to Philae Bay. Now, Maya Bay is part of Kopipi Lay, and just second to Maya Bay, the most popular tourist attraction on that island is Philae Bay, Philae Lagoon if you like. It's a spectacular place. I think it's actually nicer to visit than Maya Bay. The problem is, though, do you want to be visiting it with a few hundred people and the smelly, noisy boats? Thailand's top tourist destination, the Phi Phi Islands, is beginning to feel the negative effects of mass tourism, including environmental damage and safety risks for tourists. This has prompted the authorities to take urgent action to improve the situation. And Philae Bay, or Philae Lagoon, is the second most popular bay after Maya Bay in Krabi. It's affected by heavy boat traffic. On average, about 120 boats, including long-tail boats and speedboats, enter the bay every day. And there's a bit more of a challenge because when the tide is down, you can't get boats into the lagoon. So there's only particular times of the day they can actually get the boats in there. And there's a quick bit of video from Travel Here, and happy to acknowledge their page on YouTube, just showing how beautiful it is as you travel into this, and it gets more beautiful as you go, and of course you get the opportunity to swim in there and take some photos. It can also be difficult for tourists to enjoy the landscape due to the crowds, says this story. Some even venture outside the designated bathing areas to escape the crowds, putting themselves in danger. So they had a meeting on February the 5th and they decided they're going to reduce the number of empty long-tail boats entering the bay. And these boats are no longer allowed to park in Philae Lagoon or transfer tourists from speedboats to long-tail boats. And designation of certain swimming areas in Philae Bay where tourists are only allowed to swim in designated areas. The photo sort of speaks for itself, doesn't it? All boats entering Philae Bay and offering tourist services must be licensed by the Department of National Parks. So I think one of the attractions of visiting some of these spectacular beaches and lagoons around the Phi Phi Islands is, well, I think in your own mind, going to visit it and it's all pristine and serene and quiet and you've got the whole place to yourself. Well, that's just not what's happening anymore. And we are right in the middle of the peak season, and it's the busiest time of the year. And things will quieten down a little bit later, but long term, they're going to have to find some better solutions so people can get a much better experience than they're currently getting. I'd just like to acknowledge 5-Star Marine at 5starmarinephuket.com. They've been our sponsor for a long time, certainly worth supporting, and they will take you out to places like Maya Bay and Philae Lagoon, as well as a lot of other islands. And if you sort of say to Sean or the skipper, I'd like to go somewhere a bit quiet, they know where there are some really nice, quiet, equally beautiful spots somewhere around Pangar Bay. So contact 5starmarinephuket.com. Moving on to this story, a bit of a worry as I'm sitting out here in the open, from nationthailand.com. Dengue fever becoming a big problem in Thailand, 8,000 plus infected this month. And the Disease Control Department is warning people to protect themselves against mosquito bites, saying dengue fever has become a serious problem with over 8,000 infected and 13 people dying just this month. And the DCD Director General said as many as 8,197 people had been diagnosed with dengue in January, and that marks a 91% increase from January last year. 13 patients have died from dengue fever this year so far, and common symptoms are high fever, severe headache, muscle and joint pain, nausea, vomiting, skin rash and swollen glands. You really don't want to get it. Now, some people do have relatively minor symptoms, although even the minor symptoms are relatively unpleasant. I've known plenty of people that have had dengue, but some people will end up in hospital under a great deal of pain, and they'll probably spend a week to 10 days recovering. So dengue fever is something that you want to avoid. And most of the patients this year were children aged 5 to 14 years. In most cases were diagnosed in southern and central provinces. And patients who succumbed to the fever were in 11 provinces. The eldest was 65 years old. All hospitals treating dengue fever patients should hand out anti-mosquito cream or spray to other patients to protect them from the virus. He added that people around dengue patients should also take steps to protect themselves and see the doctor immediately if they develop a temperature, giving you the impression that dengue may be able to be caught from humans to humans. Well, no, that's not quite the case. Let's read this. Dengue cannot be spread directly from person to person. However, a person infected and suffering from dengue fever can infect other mosquitoes. And then, of course, those mosquitoes can go on to bite somebody else. Humans are known to carry the infection from one country to another or from one area to another during the stage when the virus circulates and reproduces in the blood system. So it's transmissible from human to human, but via a mosquito. Right, let's move on to our next story, and it's parole time. Cowsod English on their Facebook page reports the Director General of the Corrections Department confirmed yesterday afternoon the department has submitted the name of inmate Thaksin for parole to the Justice Minister. If approved, it will be effected from February the 18th, just in time to come to my birthday. And this story from Bangkok Post, Thaksin soon qualified for early parole. And a special parole can be granted to inmates who are either over 70 or who are suffering from a critical illness or disability after they've served 1/3 of their sentence, which apparently will be the case with Thaksin on February the 18th. And a bit of background, after 15 years of self-imposed exile, Thaksin returned to Thailand on August the 22nd. The Supreme Court handed him an 8-year jail term for his previous and finalised legal cases. That sentence was later reduced to 1 year by royal clemency. But, as they say, there's more. Yet, Thaksin still faces a criminal charge of lèse majesté dating back to 2016, and the Attorney General will decide if he'll be indicted. And Thaksin was alleged to have defamed the monarchy in comments made in Seoul, South Korea in May 2015. All going to plan. All right, now heading off to Myanmar. I haven't spoken much about that of late. This is just a horrifying story reported in Irrawaddy.com. Myanmar junta warplanes bombed school in Karenni State, killing 4 children. And at least 4 children were killed, more than 10 injured when Myanmar junta warplanes attacked a school in a Karenni State township on Monday. 2 fighter jets dropped 2 bombs and unleashed machine gun fire on the school in the village at around 10 a.m, according to a volunteer. And the attack came despite no clashes between junta forces and resistance groups in the area. And the next paragraph talks about where it is. Basically, it's up in the far north of Myanmar. And the junta conducted over 160 artillery strikes and 76 airstrikes in the Karenni State last year, killing over 180 civilians and injuring around 140, according to data from the Karenni Human Rights Group. Now, this is one admittedly horrific occurrence among thousands over the past 3 years. Little seems to be happening in the way of international sanctions. At the same time, there is definitely a shift, and the junta at the moment are on the back foot if you sort of read through the many stories that come out each day. And at the same time, CalSotEnglish.com says 9 UN Security Council members urge a halt to airstrikes by Myanmar's military. This is just another attempt of people in suits to try and put some pressure on Myanmar, and 9 members of the United Nations Security Council condemned indiscriminate airstrikes by Myanmar's military against civilians before an envoy briefed the Council on Monday as part of regional efforts to implement a peace plan that so far has been largely ineffective, I would suggest wholly ineffective. And the military leadership in Myanmar has so far ignored the plan, and violence and the humanitarian crisis in the country have been growing at a rapid pace. And just some background, the military seized power from the elected government of Aung San Suu Kyi in February 2021 and is facing an armed pro-democracy resistance movement that is assisted by ethnic minority fighting forces. And a bit further down there, more than 18 million people need humanitarian aid and 2.6 million people remain displaced. And Myanmar's UN ambassador, who still represents Suu Kyi's ousted government, says that democratic forces are gaining ground and the military junta is losing every day. Now, just that short sentence really describes exactly what is happening in Myanmar at the moment. I read Irrawaddy.com every day, and there's just story after story of little skirmishes here and there where the minority ethnic groups are winning ground from the junta. So I really don't know what's going to happen there. I mean, the junta is pretty much still in control, but it's a mess. And you sort of wonder if the junta loses control, who exactly is going to run the country? Are all these ethnic forces going to go, here you are, Aung San Suu Kyi, you can come out of jail and take over the country again? I really don't think it's as easy as that. And all this really happening on the doorstep of Thailand, and the Thai government seeming unwilling to do anything about trying to help other than a few refugees coming across the border, the total situation. And with that from our little outside studio, thank you for watching today. Hopefully you're a bit more up to date with things happening around Thailand and neighbouring countries. If you can subscribe to the channel, I'd be very grateful. Otherwise, we'll see you tomorrow.